Hello guys, welcome to the next session on Oracle SOA Suite 12c. Today we will look at another important topic called events. Okay, so first of all we'll understand why do we need events, what are events, and then we will look at an example. Okay, and the other day while I was showing you the real-time project, like I was showing you the JDE to Salesforce integration, and we have seen the usage of events there. So we will also look at that use case today. Okay, and we clearly understand why events are used, and this is one of the most simplest topics in Oracle SOA Suite, but yeah, and just this is one of the most simplest topics and one of the most useful topics in Oracle SOA Suite. Okay, so let us first understand what is an event. By the way, I'm not going through much on the PowerPoint presentation these days because most of the things I'm explaining. So I'll send you all the PowerPoints to you um, so that you can just refer to that. But whatever is there, anyways, I'm covering it through the examples and explanations. So I just don't want to waste even more time on that. In fact, in this batch, like I've been explaining little more examples. So kind of I thought like, okay, let's uh, invest time on explanations other than go through the PowerPoints. Okay. So first of all, let's understand what is an event. Event, as you know, it's some kind of a activity. Yeah, just you know what is an event. I mean, a regular definition. But in the context of SOA, what event is basically you fire something without knowing to whom you are firing. Okay, let's say I'm a publisher. I'll just publish an event. Okay, I don't care who are my subscribers. And similarly, I don't care who are my subscribers and I need not know or I will not know also. Let's say you all subscribe to my blog. Whenever I write a blog, I don't keep all of you in mind, right? I just write a blog and publish it. So whoever has subscribed to me automatically will get notifications, but I really don't care, right? End of the day, like I will never know that you guys have received my blog, correct? Because it's kind of a completely decoupled activity. Similarly, when it comes to the subscriber, like a subscriber will subscribe for an event, and he doesn't care like who is firing the event. Okay. Now, same example, you guys are subscribed to my blog. Now I can log into my blog and write it, or maybe I can hire some other person and ask him to write it. It doesn't matter, right? Every time a blog is written, you get a message because you are subscribed to it. Okay, so you don't know who is firing the event or who is writing the blog. The same concept holds good here also. So a publisher will never know who is who will be the subscribers, and similarly a subscriber will never know who is the publisher. Okay, all a publisher cares is to fire an event. All a subscriber cares is to basically subscribe for the event. Once you subscribe it, you get the event payload, and then it is your wish to how you wanted to take it forward. Like you get the message posting, like you get a notification saying a new blog is written. Now it is up to you, right? You can go through it, you can actually edit it or whatever, or you can just leave it. So it is up to you, but you get the event or you get the notification. So the same thing holds good in case of events also. They're completely decoupled. Okay. So we have been doing SOA examples since long time now, but we have seen like every time, though we learned that mm, SOA is kind of completely decoupled, but even when it is completely decoupled, there exists some kind of a wiring, right, between the uh, components and services. So if you look at this BPEL, so this BPEL knows that it is talking to this guy. Okay, decoupling comes at that point wherein this service will be registered in a service registry, and you are just calling it by the name instead of the actual endpoint. Yes, there is decoupling definitely, but not 100% decoupling, because you are firing the event from the client to your BPEL process. So your BPEL process will know that the request has come from this guy, and your BPEL process will know that that it has to invoke these services, right? So it knows its source or it knows its invoker, and it also knows whomever it is calling, right? So even like a full-fledged SOA components, there is still some kind of a coupling, some kind of a tight coupling, but it's like it's really not a point to point. Okay, so we have seen like what are the issues we had with point to point. So it is not a point to point, but still there is some kind of decoupling, some kind of coupling. So in order to deal with that, there is a new concept that is given by SOA called event-driven architecture. Okay, so in event-driven architecture, basically we deal with all the events. Okay, so let me tell you now. If you know what is an event, I'll give you a real-time example of how we use it. So let me open the same example. Okay, I'll explain you a scenario wherein, or you have already seen the example, right? Real-time project. So let me explain you how we are doing that. Okay. Now, the whole point of that particular project, which I've shown you, is basically JDE to Salesforce integration, right? Now, why we are doing that is because that company which I am working for is basically has JDA as its ERP system. Okay, but all these call center guys, that's kind of a company which manufactures certain components and sells it. Okay, so all these sales representatives will be there, right? They will go and sell all the products, but whenever there is some issue, these guys talk to the call center folks, right? So when they talk, they'll give them a reference ID or a barcode on the product to see what are the details. Okay, whether it is in the warranty or any information they want, they can talk to the call center. But these call center folks are finding it difficult to navigate through the JDE screens because it's kind of like very raw, right? So that's why the company has come up with a program called Blue. I mean, some program. Okay, it has given some name, but basically its concept is to integrate all the existing ERP systems into Salesforce, because Salesforce has many advantages. Like it's very easily navigatable. So even for a non-technical person, whoever is working in the call center, like he can easily do things. Okay, and even for the sales representatives, whenever they go to a client and sell something, they can very easily navigate through the screens and enter the details. That's the whole purpose of that project. Okay, so it's basically an existing ERP system which is coming from years into Salesforce. Okay, and now, so this is, I have shown you one project which is for a division. Okay, and my company, whatever I'm working for, has like 17 or 18 divisions. Okay, and each division has, it was from the parent company or it has come through an acquisition. Okay, so each division would have its own ERP system. It could be a JDE, or it could be EBS, or it could be PRMS, or there are n number of source systems, right? Like it could be SAP, because it's coming from years. And this program wants all the call centers to be on SFDC. Okay, so there is a parallel project going on, which is EBS to SFDC integration. Okay, and similarly another project which is having PRMS to SFDC integration. Okay, so to name a few, I've given you 3 different real projects. I'm not uh, telling stories here. These are like real-time projects which are like a 8 month to 1 year old, 1 year big projects. Okay, so now in all these, like for a division, let's say for a medical division, there is an order would be there, right? A salesperson can create an order. Similarly, uh, let's say there is another division called endoscopy. They also create orders. And let's say there is another division called communication. They also create orders. Okay, because my company produces different kinds of products in different divisions. Each guy has orders. Okay, so we are talking about orders in different source systems. So let us first think of the JDE system. Okay, let's say this represents the order related tables in JDE. Okay, so JDE is nothing but a database, right? I mean, it is a ERP system, but all the data will be in the database. Okay, so let's say this set of fields or this set of tables contain the order information, and there is Salesforce on the right, which would be my ultimate target. Okay, and my duty is basically to get all this information and then Salesforce actually exposes all its objects as a web service. Okay, so Salesforce also has an order object which is in specific format. Okay, and it is exposed as a web service. So this format is different on the Salesforce side, and these guys on the JDE side format is different. So I'll basically do a transformation. Okay, so before integrating, what I do is I get all the data, transform it into Salesforce, and then load it into Salesforce. This is what we do. Okay, or any SOA project would do. Basically integrate two systems. Fine. Now this is for one division 1 which uses JDE. Now let's say if we do another, if the second guy, let's see how the second guy does. So let's assume that this box represents EBS. Okay. So EBS also has orders in its own way, right? It would have its own tables through there, and then this guy also has to create the order, right? So what it does, it gets the data and then in its own format, and then it transforms into the Salesforce specific one and sends the data. And similarly, there would be a third system, and similarly there would be a fourth system, whatever it is. So basically, there is a transformation and then send it. I'm just talking about one object. There would be n number of objects, like orders is one. You have assets, you have contracts, you have pricing. So there are so many things. Okay. So we are just looking at one object, means a small part of a project, and trying to understand the concept of events. Okay. So if I do it this way, there are two parts here. One is pulling the information. Okay. One is transformation, and the third one is uh, uploading to Salesforce, or maybe invoking the writing to Salesforce. Okay. Now this part is completely different for each and everything. Like till here, it's completely different because pulling the information in JD, pulling the information in EBS, each different ERP system is different. Okay. And transformation also, each source schema is different. So each transformation would be different. But writing to the Salesforce would be exactly the same because see, here the target object is Salesforce schema, correct? And then we are putting it in Salesforce. Here also it's a Salesforce schema, we are putting it in Salesforce. Okay. So if we do this point to point, just like how we have drawn, then what are we doing? Like anyways, we need to do all this stuff, like whatever I am highlighting. But apart from that, we are basically repeating the Salesforce stuff, right? If you see here, we are basically repeating the Salesforce stuff. We are just writing to Salesforce, but we are redoing it in each and every project. Okay. So instead of that, what we can do is, one disadvantage with this is duplicate code, and you know the disadvantages of duplicate code. If something changes here, like all the code has to be changed, like it was all divisions. So instead, what we have come up with is we have basically divided this one into two parts. Like this is the source side part and this is the target side part. Okay. So if you see here, how many source side parts you have, like how many ERPs you have in your system, like those many source side parts, right? But you just need one target side part. Okay. So that all these guys will actually call this. One thing is, you can actually implement your target site as a BPEL process, okay, and expose it as a web service, and then you can call this web service from your source target. So after you do your source, you can call this guy and finish it off, okay. But for that, another one disadvantage is, like, each division has to know where is this Salesforce guy, and then they have to get it right, okay. That's one thing. And what is the other issue you have? Now these guys are like, they have super funding, so they are doing it in latest 12c stack. Okay, but there is a division which is like whose sales are not so good, so they don't have funds. They are still in 11g. Okay, so how can you call a service in 11g and how can you call it in a 12c? Like, it is a web service, yes, you can still do it, but if you want to directly call within the composite, you cannot, right? Now let's say, I mean, obviously two different versions and two different codes you need to maintain, right? So instead what we have done is we have created all the source side composites. Okay, like each circle represents each division, and we have one target side composite, and the communication we are doing it in the form of events. Okay, so this guy throws an event called order event. Okay, and this guy also throws an event called order event, because basically ultimately what we are doing is creating an order, right? So whoever wants to create an event, what they do is they transform the payload in the event type, and then they throw the event. Okay, and this guy on the target will subscribe for the same event called order event. Okay, so the source side composite, see, it gets the information from JDE. What it does is basically transforms it into the event type and then throws it, and that's all. Like, it doesn't care. It could be 11G or 12C or whatever version it is. It doesn't care. And similarly here, endoscopy, it gets from EBS, throws an event, done. Okay. So it even doesn't know like who is going to consume it. All it does is it just throws an event. Now this guy, whenever it gets an event, it starts its process. So it will convert the event payload into Salesforce payload, and then it updates salesforce.com. Okay. So event driven architecture will give you an infrastructure, something like a queue. Okay, wherein all the events will be thrown into this, and then this guy will basically subscribe to that event. Okay, so the advantage with this is a change in the source would not trigger a change in the target, and then everything is completely decoupled, right? So tomorrow a new division comes in, all it has to do is just create an event and throw it. Okay, so this new target will automatically pick it up. As long as it is the same order event, it will pick it up. Similarly, for assets, there would be an asset event. Okay, so there would be another composite which deals with assets, will subscribe for another event called asset event. Okay, so an event is basically a unique definition, okay, which represents a particular entity. Okay, so any composite, when it subscribes to a particular event, it will trigger whenever that event happens. Okay, so this is how complete decoupling happens in Oracle SOA, or in general, this is how completely decouple happening in SOA. Can,
Uh, Ravi, one question over here. As you mentioned, it's a decoupled, right? What I am saying is, with this approach, what we need to do is every what you can say producer should write his own people process. Correct? I
correct,
mean to say, publisher he has to write, right? So there will be,
correct,
yes, of course, there will be one subscriber, so which is you mentioned from the Salesforce service side. So,
correct,
but so if we take a JMS example, right? In the JMS example, so if you put a message to a particular destination, the
correct.
subscriber will subscribe from that. So how does this refers to this differs from the event? In case of event, we still can see duplication of code. So I thought because every guy has to write one people process who should publish into the event. Correct?
Correct. And if you observe, each BPEL process is completely different. This deals with getting the details from JDE and then publishing. Okay. Whereas this guy deals with a completely different thing. Like this guy deals with getting the details from EBS and publishing. This guy might deal with some other thing. Okay. So each BPEL process that you see here is completely different logic that it is doing. It is not the same. Okay.
Okay,
If it is
so
reading the same
e-
source, then you can actually reuse the same composite, but it is not reusing the same source.
okay, so what my question was, JDE, it's basically any system in the world compliance with the G2W server, or you can say, I mean to say JMS server, right? It's
Okay,
compliant with the.
correct,
So JDE can directly put message into a JMS, and JMS can put that, right? Why specifically event they introduce? Yeah, I understand. E-business suite we are using. The e-business suite generates an event. For
correct,
that, we have an event subscriber. Event subscriber will subscribe, and the right side we have a publisher, which will be always listening to that email. So that
Correct.
like subscribes. What my question was, in every system is a JMS compliant system, right?
Correct.
So why we still go for events rather than a JMS?
Okay. So JMS is kind of a queue, right? Whereas event will conform to message, something called message oriented middleware. Okay. So message oriented middleware, you have so many things like whenever, I mean, you have a persistence mechanism wherein whenever some message is fired, okay, whenever an event is fired, and then the target is down, like it will make sure that it reaches the target and it will acknowledge back. So there are some things that JMS queues doesn't do, where events do it. Okay, so basically the underlying concept, I mean, whatever you are saying is completely true. I mean, you can still do it. Even JMS also completely decouples things, because it also follows the same nomenclature wherein you put something in the queue and you get something from the queue. Okay, so here we are talking about events wherein you are putting something in the queue, or you're putting something in the event driven infrastructure, and then you're getting something from the event. But what event does is much more than a queue, than a basic queue. Okay, you can just Google for message oriented middleware benefits, and then you will know a list of benefits that it does over a queue.
Okay. Okay, so one to like shortcut my conversation, like what I heard is like the if we take a typical example of e-business suite,
Mm-hmm.
e-business suite is capable of like it has a inbuilt thousands of events.
Correct.
Like yeah,
Yes.
so that is one yeah, so one reason I found actually. So I thought like there could be any other. So as you mentioned, yes, definitely it might have different capabilities.
Correct. And then your source system, I mean, okay, EBS is like it might give some JMS message, but there might be some source system which is coming from here, like the PRMS system, which might not have a default infrastructure to provide events. Okay, to provide a message to JMS. So we'll have to again write that infrastructure on top of the uh, PRMS to put the message in the queue. We can, I mean, we can definitely do that model also, but events have much more flexibility over your normal queues.
Okay, fine.
Yep. And then another thing is all your SOA components like mediators and BPL have inbuilt model to start using an event. Just like how it starts with a message, they can start using an event. Okay, so you don't have to configure a JMS queue and then do it. Like events, they are what do you call, like they are pre-built in your SOA components. Okay, so they can start the process just with an event. You don't have to do any extra configuration. So this is how it basically decouples things. So what we will do is we will do an example to understand how we model events. Okay, and then like I will conclude the topic. Okay, so in order to do that, in order to do our events, the first thing that you need to do is create the event definition. Okay, so as I told you, each event has a specific name. Okay, so if the event name is, if it is ordered events, so basically it represents creation of an order. Okay, or let's say in regular terms, I write blogs on SOA and I write blogs on BPM. Okay, so whoever are subscribed to SOA will get notification only when I write SOA blogs. So like when I write a BPM blog, all the SOA subscribers won't get anything, because this is a separate event from your BPM event. Similarly here also, each event will be unique. Each event has a definition called event definition. Okay, so event definition, what it basically does is, other than the metadata like the name and the type, etc., like the name, it also has a payload structure. Okay, so when I say event in correspondence to Oracle SOA, what it means is event name plus the payload. Okay, so when I say subscribe to an event, when I subscribe to an event, all I get is a payload. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do, just like any other SOA composite, is to define a schema and then define a event. So let us create an example. I will say events infra and then empty composite. Okay. So today what we will do is I have created a temporary table. Okay, I've created a temporary table and which I copied from departments. I don't want to waste time. So I have this table where I will, whenever a new record is created into this table, what I will do is I will fire an event called, say, new department event. Okay, so all the subscribers for the new department event would automatically start their own processes. Okay, so let's say an employee is a new employee has joined your company. Okay, so or in other words, say I have interviewed a person and I have confirmed the candidature. So what I do is I create a new record in an employee table, and then that will fire an employee event. So there would be so many subscribers, like one from the HR department, which starts his records processing, one for the facilities department, which starts his location setup and all. One starts for the manager, wherein which works on assigning the laptops, etc. Okay, so for a single event, there could be hundreds of consumers, and you don't even care. So what you do is you create an employee, and then all the subscribers would automatically start their work. So here also what we will do is we'll create a department, okay, a new department, and then we'll create a subscription process which simply writes to a file. Okay, it could be any logic, but what we will do is whenever a new record is created, we'll fire an event, and then we will create another composite, okay, which basically subscribes to that event and then does some work. Okay, so since we are doing this, our payload would be this one, right, in the event. So we'll create a schema for this payload. So it will be one int string intent, right? So let me create the schema first. I would say events schema. I would say department event type, and then I have the element, which is okay. So this is my schema, and now that I have a schema, let me create the event definition. Okay, so I will create a new event definition. You have the event file name. I would say events infra definition set. Okay, or definition, and then I will create the, this is just a file, and a file can have a number of events defined, just like just like XSD file can have any number of schemas defined in it, right? Any number of types and elements. Similarly, I would say new department event. Okay, and what is its type? Its type is this one, and I say okay. And event is one other file which is published to MDS usually. Okay, so you can actually publish this to MDS, and then I say okay. So I have created an event. Done. So that's all. This is the only prerequisite that is required for events. Okay. Now what is our example? Our example is basically I have a database or a departments table. Whenever a new record is inserted to the departments table, like I want to throw an event, right? Okay. So in Oracle SOA, there are two components which let you throw events. One is the mediator and one is Drupal. Okay, like event infrastructure is pre-built in mediator and Drupal. So what we will do is to look at both the things. what we'll do is we'll publish the event using mediator, we'll subscribe it using Beeple. Okay, so that we will look at both the things. Okay, so it would be something like this. You have a mediator component here which throws an event. Okay, so this will be your source side composite. Okay, so let me create a database adapter. So whenever I create a new record, it should start. So basically I am polling on the table, or I am listening on a table. Whenever a new record is inserted, I want to start, right? So basically you will use a database adapter. Okay, I would say DB poller service, and then what is this? Okay, we'll check it later. And then what you want? I want to poll for new or changed records, right? Okay, just a moment. I'll get some water. Okay, so we want to poll for new or changed records. And what is the table I want to poll? I want to poll this table. And then next, okay. Since I just created this, I haven't defined any primary key also. It is asking me, so I'll define my department ID as a primary key. And then what all values I want. There is this thing called sequence column, which I'm not checking it because I don't need it, but I have this for another purpose. Okay, so I have this next. And now, after you read a value from a table, okay, after I read a, let's say this is the new inserted value. Okay, so after I read, what is that I wanted to do? Now, why do we want this concept is, now this table may have 100 records already existing. Okay, if a new guy comes, okay, a 101th record will get in and it will create an event. And now after a couple of days, a new entry comes. How will the system know that it is the latest one? Or how will the system know that it is already read or not? Okay, or maybe you can say that you are continuously listening, right? So you will have the previous things in memory. One thing in SOA is you shouldn't have any persistent objects, right? Okay, even if you keep it aside, let's say I have restarted the composite. Okay, so everything is gone. Okay, but the details in the database will still be intact, right? They won't be refreshed. Now let's say there are like 120 records, wherein 100 are read, 20 are new records, and I restart a database. How will my uh, composite know what are read and what are not read? That is where this thing comes in. Okay, after you read a record, what you want to do? You can delete a row. If you delete a row, then anyways it won't be there, so you won't read it for the second time. Okay, but that is not a good practice because you always wanted the I mean, you shouldn't delete, right? You always want the information to be there. Maybe you can actually have this or for later debugging and all. Another thing is you can update a field in a table saying that whether it is read or not. Okay, so that is this option, update a field in the table, which is kind of a logical delete. So for this, I have created this extra column. Okay, so this column says whether it is read or not. All the new values will have a value of n. The moment it is read, I update it to r. And similarly, if you don't have this, like if you don't have a write access on your table, okay, this is some table provided by a different team, okay, and they don't give you write access, then you cannot create this column, right? So you can create another column, another table, and you can actually have the, say, have your department IDs, what all are read. So there are different strategies that you can do. So in this, let's select this option wherein I want to update this as R. Okay, and then next. So what is the logical field? logical field is sequencing count. What is the red value? Red value is R. If it is not red, it has to be N. And reserved value is when the record is being processed. Okay, let's say this composite, whatever we are doing, takes like 2 minutes to do the whole stuff before processing. So during, once it is picked and before fired, like in those 2 minutes, you have to reserve it, right? So that is the reserve column. You can go with the default and say next. All these options are like, what is the polling frequency? Like you want to poll every 10 seconds, you can do that and then finish it off. Okay, so this will be my poller. Let us give the proper JNDI name. Okay, and then after this, like whenever new record is created, this fires up. So basically the information comes here, and then you want to throw an event, right? There is no event activity directly, but instead you can do it either with a BPEL or mediator. So let me drag and drop a mediator. I would say event publisher, or I would specifically say department event publisher. Okay, and I say define interface later and say okay, done, and I will wire it. Okay, so after I wire, like I don't have anything, I want to create a routing rule. So click on this. Till now we are either doing an echo or existing service, right? But here you say publish event, okay, and say okay. And what is the event you want to publish? I want to publish the new department event, which is there, okay. Or you can actually browse it from your MTS. So whatever it is, say okay and then finish it off. Now it will create me a routing rule. So in the transformation, I wanted to transform it. So in my case, in my real example, like I wanted to transform it from JDE type to the event type, right? But since like both these two are of same schema, I can directly do this. And maybe, yeah, I can directly do this. It will auto match by the names and say okay. Okay. So now the moment I create a new record, it will publish it. Okay, so let me deploy this one. We have only done half the part, only publishing part, but let's see if it really works or not. Okay, we said that the publisher will never care if there are subscribers or no, right? So we know that there are no subscribers, but let's see how this guy behaves. Okay, so it is deployed. So how do we test it? Okay, if I open EM, okay, so this is the one, right? But if you see here, the test curtain is disabled because the start point of your composite is basically a new record in departments table, right? The temporary table. So let us create a new record. Okay, so let me say 103 because this is primary. Okay, and then I say commit. Now, see, okay, now it is red. See, I have inserted n, but the moment I've kept it as n, see, I have I mean, the polling frequency is 10 seconds, but what we observed it happened immediately, right? Why? Because, I mean, the polling frequency is set to 10 seconds, but it is not 10 seconds from the moment I write it, correct? So it might be like 8 seconds where I created this. That's why it has immediately done it, but you can keep it as 60 seconds so that you will observe initially it is n, then it is the reserved value, then it becomes r, okay? Whatever it is. So basically it fired an event. Okay, and where did the event go? The event just went off away. I mean, it went into the event infrastructure, And since there are no subscribers, it was just like that, okay? Because we would never care. Now, let's see how we subscribe for an event. You can create a new composite for event subscription. I will do it in the same composite so that you will clearly see the difference, okay? So how do you subscribe for event? Same, two components, either Beeple or Mediator. So let's use Beeple for subscription. Okay? So I would say event subscription Beeple, and then the type you say as subscribe to events. What is my event? My event is a new department. No. So this is my event. So what it means is the moment an event is fired, this guy will get it. Okay, because since this is a subscriber. Okay, how does it know? By name. It is a new department event, so all the subscribers subscribe to the new department event will get it. So in my case, what we want to do, maybe how we want to use it, maybe we'll just write it to a file. Okay, it could be any logic within your Beeple. I'll just write it to a file. I would say file service, and then write something to a file, and then say physical part. Let us do a physical part. So okay, I'll do this, and then say events file extends of XML, and what is the type. You can define any type. I'll use the same type. Okay, and then I will call this from the Beeple process. Okay. So earlier we have seen the first activity of a Beeple process is received, but then you had a wire, something like this, right? Till now, you had a wire like this, if you observe. Okay, but now it is not there because it is an event. Okay, and even when I double click on the event here, or when I double click on the receive here, see, it says event instead of partner link. Earlier it was partner link when it is a web service. Now it's an event. What is the event? This is the event, and my input payload is copied to this variable. Okay. So after that, what I want to do, I want to write it to a file. So I'll just do this. I would say invoke file service, and then I'll create a variable one way, right? So no output, and then finish it. Okay. Now I have to assign this, right? So I would say assign input, or I would say assign web service input, and then I just assign it. Okay. Now you have to do one-on-one mapping, but since the types are same, I can do at the parent level. If the types are different, then you have to do one by one. Okay, so I am publishing it as 1.1 now. Okay. So how do I start? I do the same thing. Okay, it's great. So let me see if the file is created. Okay. Let us look at EM, what happened. Welcome on the server. At 1.1.
Ravi, is event subscriber off?
No, it will be by default on. See, the first event it took it. Or did I say 103 or 104? 104 only, right? Right. Okay, it is N, it is R. See, you observed it. Okay. It will be on by default. It's not coming. We're going here. No, where is it going? Let me do it this way. I will fire the event myself. It's not coming. I'll tell you what is this, but I will try it out first. Okay, it has come now. When I file it separately, what happened there? Let me redeploy it. Yeah, it has created a file now. This is good. Let me redeploy it. So now it's coming. So maybe it did not get deployed properly earlier. Okay, I'm creating 7 on it. Okay, it's red. Yeah, on outside. See, okay. Maybe first time the deployment was not proper, but whatever it is. So okay. So now what's happening is, let me show you the instance. So since both publisher and subscriber are on the same composite, like you can see both, but usually your publisher and subscriber would be two separate components. So publisher part, you will just see the first 2 lines, subscription part you will see. So when you do this example, you do both in 2 separate components, okay? So if I see the publisher part, what it is doing is, it went into the mediator and then it fired this event, new department event, okay? And then it's done. When you click on this, you will know what is the payload. Just copy this from department to department. Copy it. I'll tell you that in a moment. And now after that, if you want to look at the target side, it's quite simple. So same instance, if you look at the target DeepL, so you will see that it has received the event, okay, and then it assigned the input and then it has written it to the file. This is normal, like you know how the file adapter works, okay. So this is how event works, okay. So it's very simple, like you both are completely decoupled. Event is nothing but a payload having some data, okay. Now let's say, like usually how it happens is, these two would be big composite, like you are assigned with the job of writing it to Salesforce, whereas another person is assigned with the job of getting the data from JDE. Okay, now both of you guys will work independently, but you want to test your own thing. Okay, so but here what we have seen is, unless we fired an event, we fired a request here, or we created a record here, it did not invoke this, right? Because you need an event. But your subscribers may not be ready because he might be on leave, or he might be taking more time than you, and you're fast. Okay, whatever it is, like you're done with your composite and you want to test. So how you test is, you can actually do it directly. So if you have the event payload, okay, which I copied, if you remember, like earlier, I copied the event payload, right? You can directly fire this event, though these guys are not there. How you do that is, you just go to your SOA infra, just right click on that and say business events. Okay, go to the event that you want to test, because you know whom you're subscribing, right? So at this point, like basically we don't have this. I'm just deleting it. Okay, just to show you, actually you don't do it. Where is it? Okay, or let me not do that, but let's say this is not existing. Okay, we have only subscriber part. If I want to do that, what I do is, I will select this particular event and then say test, and then you copy the payload. Here, you paste the payload. Okay, anyways, the event definition is here, new department event at the namespace. You just publish it, and this publish will actually create automatically. Okay, so this publish will create an event here, and then it will test your DeepL. Like, or what you want to do is test your logic, right? Whether you are writing properly to Salesforce. That will be done here. So that's all about events. It's very simple. Okay, what you can do is, okay, we have done this event DeepL, right? Now this has input as a web service, correct? Now you can also have input as an event. Okay, so this guy will get fired whenever you call a web service or you fire an event. Okay, so you create an event which is of type department ID, and then how do you modify this DeepL to use either event or a web service? Like, it has two doors through which you can open this DeepL. So how you do is, there is an activity called pick activity in DeepL. If you see here, there is an activity called pick. Now what is this pick? Now here, if you observe, like the only starting point is this request from your client, right? Okay, so if you want more number of different kinds of uh, uh, requests to start your people process, one easiest example would be an event. Okay, it could be either through a client or through an event. So if you want two starting points for your people process, that's when a pick comes into picture. So when you pick will be the first activity, okay, and you can have any number of on message or single on alarm. Okay, this is called on alarm event. What is on alarm is, basically it sets a time. Okay, so let's say if this BPL process is not called within 2 days, it has to start automatically. Okay, and maybe this is kind of an escalation process. Okay, so whenever another process is not started for 2 hours, so you want to automatically start it. So that is where on alarm comes into picture. And here on message means, this will be on message because you want to start it through this message, or you can even start it using an event. Okay? So you will just say event here and then subscribe to the event, like you would have published it to the MBS, right? So you can do this, okay, and then browse your input variable. So this is one way of having multiple start points to your people process. And the point, the activity that you use is pick. So what you do is, you modify your BPL process to have either existing web service or an event as a possible input, and then you create another composite which fires an event which has only department ID, because department ID is the input for this. That is your exercise. Maybe you can do it after you do the events in example. So that's all for today. Sorry we have started late today. But from tomorrow onwards, we will use the same URL. I mean, the most latest one that I have sent you.